Bristol M.1a, 1b, and 1c. Frank Barnwell was quick to realize that speed would be essential in fighting aircraft. Soon after the Battle of the Somme began, he started to work on a high-performance single-seater. For maneuverability and lightness, he chose a rotary engine and designed for it a low-drag installation, incorporating a large-diameter spinner that was tested on a modified Bristol Scout D, number 5555. Having established the practicability of this, he proceeded to design a fully faired fuselage of good streamlined form that blended with the circular engine cowling. The basis of this fuselage was a conventional wire-braced box girder with wooden longerons and spacers. Formers and stringers provided the faired contours. To the upper longerons were attached a pair of monoplane wings. These were braced by cables, the flying wires being anchored to the lower longerons, the landing wires to a cabane structure that consisted of two flattened half loops of steel tubing. Lateral control was by ailerons, and a conventional tail unit and simple V-type undercarriage completed the aircraft, which was designated Bristol M.1a. The adoption of the monoplane layout was an imaginative and bold decision. It gave the pilot an unsurpassed field of view in all vital directions. And yet the prejudice created by the infamous monoplane ban of 1912 still existed in Britain, and Barnwell must have known that this new fighter would be viewed with great suspicion. Proof of the M1A's quality was provided by its attainment of a speed of 132 miles per hour in the course of its trial flights, made by F.P. Rainham in the summer of 1916. It underwent official trials at Central Flying School up Avon in July 1916, when its maximum recorded speed was 128 miles per hour at 5,400 feet, and the time to climb to 10,000 feet was 8 minutes 30 seconds. The test report, number M.1a, included the following observations, some of them a little surprising. Stability, lateral, very good. Longitudinal, very good. Directional, good. Machine tiring to fly. Requires good pilot. Moderate ease of landing. Machine trims at 95 to 105 miles per hour, with engine all out at 8,000 feet. Machine is nose heavy when gliding. Tendency to turn to right with engine on. The stalling speed was recorded as 50 to 52 miles per hour. The takeoff run is 85 yards. Contract number 87/A/61, dated 9th October 1916, gave the M1A the serial number A5138 and called for 4 further aircraft to be numbered A5139 to A5142. The full report on the M1A had criticized the poor forward and downward view and had suggested that it might be improved if the wing leading edges were cut back at the roots. Both leading and trailing edges were curved in to meet the spars near the wing roots, and a large cutout was made between the spars of the starboard wing at the root. On the first M1B, A5139, this was covered with transparent material. Other differences introduced on the M1Bs were the revised pyramidal cabane, consisting of 4 straight steel tubes, and the mounting of a single Vickers gun on the port upper longeron. Less obvious was the provision for the installation of a 110 horsepower Larone engine as an alternative to the Clerget. The first 2 M1Bs, A5139 and A5140, were built with the 110 horsepower Clerget. The third, A5141, had a 130 horsepower Clerget. The fourth, 5142, was fitted with one of the first 150 horsepower AR1 engines when it left the factory on 22nd of March 1917. A5142 did little flying with the AR1. When tested at Martlesham Heath later that month, the new engine was found to be delivering less than its full power and was replaced by a 110 horsepower Clerget. 2 months earlier, the Bristol monoplane's fate had been virtually sealed. In January 1917, the first M.1b, A5139, had gone to France, and on 23rd of January it was flown in the presence of Major General H.M. Trenchard by Lieutenant Armstrong, presumably Lieutenant D.V. Armstrong, who had much operational experience of the Morane-Saulnier types N, I, and V, with No. 60 Squadron, Captain A.M. Lowry of No. 70 Squadron, RFC, Captain R.M. Hill, MC, later Air Chief Marshal Sir Roderick Hill, KCB, MC, AFC, of No. 60 Squadron, RFC. Armstrong and Lowry each flew the aircraft for 10 minutes, Hill for 20 minutes. It's plain that Trenchard was immovably prejudiced against the Bristol. Without even waiting to read the pilot's reports, Hill's was dated 26th of January, Lowry's much briefer report, 23rd of January. Apparently Armstrong was not asked to submit a report. Trenchard wrote on the 23rd of January to the Director of Air Organization, "I have inspected the Bristol monoplane with the 110 Clerget, which arrived this morning, and had it tried by 2 different pilots. The machine is good and easy to fly, but it has the great drawback of not being able to see well out of. But it is a great improvement on the Morane monoplane. The Cellon fitted to the right wing to enable the pilot to see downwards is no good. I said this would be no good when I saw the machine at home, and I asked that one machine might be fitted with triplex glass, and another machine should be left with the plane cut away, leaving only a gap. I believe there are 12 of these machines which could be handed over to the Russian government if we do not want them. Those machines which have been ordered should be sent out to the Expeditionary Force to supplement my fast machines, if there are sufficient engines available for them without taking engines away from other, better machines. I shall be glad to be informed how many have been made and how many it is possible to send out. I do not want any more of these machines ordered, as undoubtedly the SE-5A, the single-seat Newport, the Sopwith Pup, and the Spad are better machines for fighting. But this machine is better than the FE-8 or the de Havilland Scout." That letter showed that Trenchard was to some extent misinformed, and he might have formed a more favorable opinion of the M.1b if he had waited for and read Hill's full and admirably objective report on the aircraft. Hill obviously found that the M.1b's performance and flying qualities to be generally very good. He said that the view downwards was bad, but that upwards was perfect. And, he added, significantly, its capacity for maintaining speed with small height drop is a great asset for fighting. Although the view underneath is so restricted, its great speed and climb should render it immune from attack. In the hands of an experienced pilot, lack of downward view should not be a serious drawback. Hill and Lowry agreed that the transparent panel in the starboard wing root was useless. Neither pilot liked the gun's position, for jams could not be cleared with the gun so far to port. Hill suggested that it should be mounted centrally and pleaded for twin guns. Inevitably, rumors of the Bristol monoplane's outstanding performance had reached RFC squadrons in France, and the arrival of production aircraft was eagerly awaited by the hard-pressed pilots. They never came. Trenchard's edict was enough to ensure that no other Bristol monoplane went to France. His grudging willingness to accept the remaining prototypes was reflected in a note recorded following a visit to the Expeditionary Force made on the 31st, 1917, by Major General Sefton Branker. The Expeditionary Force will keep the Bristol monoplane, now out here, and the 5 others, now being completed in England, will be sent out as soon as possible. But not even these went to France. A5139 went to at least one operational squadron in February 1917, but returned to No. 1 Aircraft Depot in March and was flown back to England during that month. The type might well have been abandoned at that time, but in June 1917, 3 M.1b's, A5140 to A5142, were sent to the Middle East, possibly because large-scale operations were imminent, and Brigadier General W.G.H. Salmond had for some time been pressing for better fighting aircraft for use in Palestine. The M1Bs were allocated to number 111 Squadron, RFC, when it was formed in September 1917. The cutouts in their starboard wing roots were left open and uncovered, and the Vickers gun of A5142 was mounted centrally, as had been suggested by Roderick Hill. By 27th October, number 111 Squadron showed only 2 Bristol monoplanes on its strength, and it is possible that A5142 might by then have gone to Heliopolis, where it ended its days on training duties, fitted with a camera gun and flying without its spinner. Apparently, the early assessment of the M1Bs in Palestine was sufficiently good to warrant the placing of an order for 125 production aircraft, numbered C4901 to C5025, on 3rd August 1917. These were designated Bristol M.1a and had the 110 horsepower Larone engine, for which the central hole in the spinner was slightly enlarged. The gun was mounted centrally, much as on A5142, and a clear view cutout was made on the port wing root to give the pilot downward vision on both sides. Deliveries began on 19th September 1917. The second M1c, C4902, went to Martlesham Heath on 3rd October, but crashed on the 19th, following the breakage of a valve-rockered T-piece on its engine. By the end of 1917, 14 M1Cs had gone to the Middle East Brigade, followed by a further 18 in 1918. A few of them saw operational use in Mesopotamia and Macedonia, but it seems that the 3 M1Bs were the only Bristol monoplanes to see service in Palestine. According to the official history, they had some usefulness in that they made it a little more difficult for the enemy airmen to reconnoiter, except from great heights, but their very limited endurance prevented them from being used to escort the long-distance strategical reconnaissance airplanes. In Mesopotamia, Sea Flight of No. 72 Squadron flew M1Cs from M.1a in March 1918. 2 of them won a unique and bloodless victory. A display of aerobatics so impressed some Kurds that their entire tribe gave allegiance to the British. No. 72 Squadron's Bristol monoplanes later did good work, mainly in the ground attack role, and in the capture of Kifri and Kirkuk, and in October when operating with Brigadier General A.C. Lewin's force in Kurdistan. A few M1Cs were used in Macedonia by Squadrons No. 17 and 47. Some of these aircraft were subsequently passed on to No. 150 Squadron, when it was formed at Salonika on 1st April 1918. One was shot down into Lake Dodran on 3rd September, and by the 18th of that month, No. 150 Squadron's equipment was listed as SE-5As and Camels only. 2 M1Cs were still recorded as on charge in Macedonia on 31st of October, however. In November 1917, the 3 flights of No. 72 Squadron were called in from their stations of M.1a and Samarra and brought together at Baghdad. At least 4 of their Bristol M1Cs were still in use at that time. As late as 9th July 1919, Major O.T. Boyd, M.C., flew the M1C from Baghdad to Basra in a total time of 2 3/4 hours. It thus seems that fewer than 20 Bristol monoplanes saw operational service. The remainder of the 78 that were delivered to the RFC were used at training stations in the United Kingdom and at Heliopolis in Egypt. Some were fitted with camera guns. The M1C seems to have been popular with instructors. Several were used at No. 1 School of Aerial Flying, Ayr, where they were flown by such distinguished pilots as Captain J.T.B. McCudden, V.C. DSO M.C.M.M., and Captain G.J.C. Maxwell, M.C. DFC AFC. Others were flown at Stonehenge, Marski, Montrose, and Hounslow. Several of the M1Cs used at training stations were given flamboyant color schemes by their owners. 6 M1Cs were given to Chile in 1917 in part payment for 2 warships ordered by Chile from the British shipyards that had been taken over by the Royal Navy on the outbreak of war. Had they not gone there, they would have been scrapped. This incident seems to epitomize the official attitude to the Bristol monoplane. It was something of an outcast. This in spite of its appraisement by Oliver Stewart. There seems to be little doubt that the Bristol monoplane, although it came out much earlier than the SE or the Snipe, is actually superior to both of them in all-around performance and powers of maneuver. Yet it seems likely that of the 125 that were built, a fair number never left their packing cases. 4 were bought back by the makers after the war. 1 went to Spain as M.1a, another to the USA. A third, with a 100 horsepower Bristol Lucifer radial engine, became M.1d, GEA-VP, and survived until June 1923. The last, GEASR, was withdrawn in 1925. The sole survivor, much modified, is VHUQI, preserved in Australia. This aircraft's original identity was apparently C-5001.